Welcome. Hi, I'm Dr. Ollie Jones, and I am the president of the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Care Coalition. Welcome to all of you who are on the Zoom meeting. This is going to be a very exciting presentation for you. I'm looking forward to it as myself. Just to give you the title, we're going to be talking about A Second Chance Incorporation out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is an awesome, long-standing kinship care organization. But before I get started, I want to give a couple of announcements. Our next meeting next month, Zoom, we'll be talking about cyber security. Because we know that we have children, grandchildren, and nieces and nephews that we may have custody of who are in school, and we want to be aware and knowledgeable of cybersecurity as they work with their iPads and their Chromebooks for school. So please pass the word on that we'll be having that next month at our next Zoom meeting. I also want to recognize the Office of the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition, Ron Brider, who is our executive advisor, Barb Turpin, who is our secretary, and then Stevens, who is our vice president, and Siobhan Jones has been excused with a medical issue, but we just want you to know we're opening up for anyone who's interested in being an officer. But these are co-positions. Please send me an email, ojones1234@yahoo.com. We'll put it in the chat, and if you're interested, we can have some dialogue as to what role or what position you would be interested in pursuing. We're also at the end of the presentation, we're going to ask the kinship care providers who are on the Zoom, if you would type your name into the chat box, letting us know that you are a kinship care provider. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to have a raffle. We'll be raffling off 3 $50 gift cards and want to make sure that you as a caregiver are able to participate in that particular process. At this time, without prolonging any additional time, we are so excited to have an awesome speaker before us who's coming on behalf of A Second Chance Incorporation, which was established in 1994 to provide safe and secure and nurturing environment to children in the care of relatives or close family friends that we now call kinship care. Lisa R. Chambers is an interim executive vice president of permanency, education, and system engagement with A Second Chance Incorporation. Ms. Chambers has been committed to serving children and families, and prior to joining Second Chance, she worked for the Allegheny County Office of Children, again in Pennsylvania, Youth and Family Services for over 20 years. She was also a court liaison manager. Ms. Chambers oversees all areas of the corporation between the CYF and the juvenile court, including scheduling, drug screening, genetic testing, and father engagement. Before entering the field of social work, Ms. Chambers worked as a teacher in a child care facility and earned her bachelor's degree in child development from University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. In her current role with A Second Chance, Ms. Chambers strives to educate and empower children, child welfare, judicial, in the area of kinship care services to children with safety in their own home. She comes with us highly qualified with the level of expertise working with and for A Second Chance. And so we're so excited to have her here today. Ask that you put your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring your questions. And after her presentation, we will have her to entertain any questions you may have. At this time, Lisa Chambers.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Ollie Jones. I just welcome everyone to the space. I'm just excited about being here with you today. You gave an introduction. I'm like, who is that person? I want to meet her. So thank you so much. I just want to welcome you all once again. I just thank you for taking the time out to come and really just hear about who A Second Chance is and the work that we are doing in the kinship space here in Pennsylvania. we do work with other jurisdictions, and I will speak to that later on in the presentation. But this will just be very open. I'm not going to be before you long, but I do want to start with giving you some, in everything that we do at A Second Chance, we believe Kinship and Gera. And what it means is that the Maasai warriors used to say in the village as they passed between one another in their greeting, they would ask, how are the children? Believing that if the children are well, then the community is well. And so what I would just offer up for you today is Kinship and Gera. How are the children there in Ohio? And I would love to hear your voice around how do you see the children are doing? Because this is our barometer of how we're doing as a community. I can't see when the PowerPoint is up, I can't really see much. So if you all see anyone saying anything in the chat, if someone could just spill it out on how the children are in Ohio.
My child's doing fine.
Wonderful, wonderful.
She's 15 years old. She's a teenage with an attitude, but she's doing okay.
Well, that's wonderful. We have other teenagers around that time that have attitudes all the time. I remember when I was a teenager, I had a little attitude. I thought I knew a whole lot of stuff.
I think they know it all.
You know, you get to a point in your life, you know, when you're little, you're really dependent upon your parents. Then you get to a certain age where you don't think your parents know anything.
Yep.
And then you get a little bit older and then you believe that your parents become the expert again. At least that was what happened with me.
I just wish it didn't take so long for them to realize.
Well, that's
I think
someone was talking and now somehow got back on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying, I think one of the reasons why our children in Ohio are doing fairly well. I mean, there's always challenges and always things that could be better. But for those children who can't be with their parents, I think we have a great network of kinship caregivers that have stepped up and taken on that role. We have over 100,000 grandparents, and that doesn't include aunts, uncles, cousins, and you know, the brothers and sisters of these children. And they've all stepped up to take on the role of taking care of these children, either permanently or for a shorter period of time. And that is one reason why we're so grateful for all the kinship caregivers here in Ohio.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Barbara, for giving us our roses. But I would like to say, you said, how are the children doing?
Yes.
And I'm the person that always harps on funding. And my response to that is that the children are doing great as far as, you know, their living arrangements, you know, school and all of that. But to me, they cannot live up to their full potential because of the lack of funding coming into the household for these extra bodies, like as far as extracurricular things, like maybe say musical lessons or going to the Y, like joining, say, you know, different clubs, things that cost money to facilitate. So that's my whole heart with the children. The kinship caregivers need to get more funding so that the children can live up to their full potential, or, you know, find out what their potential is. And, you know, when you have a lack of funding in the household, you know, they stay stagnant. So that's my heart with the children and the kinship care. Okay.
And we hear you. And I'm going to speak to a little bit of funding and support on how we do it at A Second Chance. But I did just want to share with you some fun facts, just for your knowledge in the presentation. Just wanted to share with you that 7.8 million children under the age of 18 live in homes where the household holder are grandparents or other relatives. So when you think about the grand scheme of that, 7.8 million children. So that kind of leads to what you're saying, that if 7.8 million of them are living with their grandparents, and most grandparents are on some type of fixed income or other relatives, that they would be in need of some additional support services. And these are just some other fun facts just before we get into the presentation, as around other stars who have been raised by their grandparents and their presidents. So Oprah Winfrey were raised by her grandparent, President Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, former President Bill Clinton, Jack Nicholson, Willie Nelson, actor and singer Jamie Foxx, Carol Burnett, and poet Maya Angelou. So this just shows the importance of grandparents and their roles in their grandchildren's lives. No matter the circumstances, everyone depends on their grandparent at some point in time. If you had the luxury to have grandparents, if they had not passed before you were born. Grandparents are younger these days. So in the past, we used to think grandparents were more the average age over 60 in their 70s. But the median age that I found out is that the median age for grandparents is 48 at this point. And I don't know why they gave this little fun fact, but that most of the grandparents are baby boomers and about 10% of them have tattoos. Now, I don't know why the tattoos were so important, but that was interesting. And then it goes on to say that grandparents are wonderful caregivers, and we know that, and we thank each and every one of you who are on this call that is a grandparent and caring for their grandchildren, that more than 2 million grandparents in the United States are acting as the head of household. So did you all know any of those facts? Because we're in the Zoom platform, you can raise your hand or you could just speak out.
I knew the facts about the famous people raised by grandparents, but as far as and I know that most of us now obviously are baby boomers, and the tattoos, I guess that's an interesting fact.
That was just interesting. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting fact. So I want to go into, because I know that you all came to hear a little bit more about a second chance and who we are and how we got started. As Dr. Jones has said, prior to me moving over into the nonprofit space, I'm working at a second chance. I worked in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for Allegheny County's Department of Human Services, the Office of Children, Youth, and Families, which is the public child welfare organization that has the authority to make decisions as it relates to abuse and/or neglect. That is the entity that is mandated by the state to make those decisions once an allegation comes in to their hotline to do the investigation to determine if abuse and neglect has occurred or not. And I worked there for them for 22 years. And back in the day, we had a lot of struggles, in which I will go into that. But I did want to just share with you some of the laws that really undergird what a second chance does and just is in favor of kin. And there's a few of them that I'm going to focus on. Can you all still see the PowerPoint? I'm going to bring it all forward.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So there are two things that's really going to kind of guide my conversation with you all this afternoon. And while I have all of the laws up there, I'm really going to highlight the Miller versus Youngcom, because that was a Supreme Court rule that which was the first to set that kin caregivers should receive the same benefits of traditional foster parents. And then we also have locally, which is going to speak to some of the work on how a second chance became to be formed in Allegheny County. And I put these other laws up here just for you to know the whole undergirding of how kinship care is supported by federal regulation. But the one thing that I want to focus on is this Rivera versus Allegheny County, because that's what kind of shifted how Allegheny County should do their practice as it related to kinship care. Back up in 1989, there was a case that came before the court that relatives were saying that their kin was placed with them, but they were not offered an opportunity to receive the same benefits of a traditional foster home. And so they brought a lawsuit against the county saying that it was unfair treatment and they were not receiving the necessary support. And in that case, That case resulted where it didn't actually go to a full trial. It ended up being settled outside of court. But however, that began the county to begin to rethink how they service families. And so if I just bring it a little bit fast forward, as a result of that case, while the practice continued on to be in a way that was not conducive to relatives. And I can speak to this because back then I didn't work for the department in 1989, but I do have some familiarity from when I did come on the scene in the department. How we used to manage relatives is that we always felt that children definitely would do better with relatives. However, we did what was called diversion. And I don't know if you all use that same terminology in Ohio or not. But what we did was we did place children with kin, and we would go to court and get what was called a final order. And so that kin caregiver had no way of getting any type of support services. There was no path for the child to get home. We would write them a letter so that they can go down to the county assistance office. And back then it was called AFDC, which is now TANF, where you could get benefits to care for the child specific, because the child was not yours. And that was just a small financial stipend. And so we would write a letter and say that Lisa is in the care of Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. This is not her child. However, the child has been placed with her, and a court has sanctioned this placement. And so she is entitled to benefits. And like I said, back then it was AFDC and now TANF. And so she would be able to receive a small stipend. However, that caregiver would not be able to receive any food stamps unless they meet the necessary income guidelines. So if you was above the guidelines, you did not qualify for the food stamps, even though you had an additional person in your household. And this was a way in which the county was able to close their case. Because there were so many cases back then. This is in the height, and if you think back in the 90s, right at the height of the crack epidemic, and there was an influx of African-American children that were coming into the child welfare system. And this was a way that kids did not necessarily stay in the system, but it was a way of not supporting relatives to give them what they need so that they could be successful and the children could be successful. So we were writing these letters that, when you think about it, this was some terrible practice back then, writing these horrible letters, having folks go down to get this minimum payment, and then wishing them the best and not giving them or hearing what else they would need. That created a whole lot of problems. And it also basically showed that there was a lack of care. And so the relatives were just like, some were saying, well, okay, they didn't want to be involved in the system, but they didn't really know what that meant. But it was really about the system trying to keep the caseload down. It was not about how were you going to better service the families that were in need. It really was about wanting to have these cases exit just because you want to decrease the caseload. Again, I'm speaking at a time that is in the height of the crack epidemic, and that was not good service or practice at that point. So the county had decided that they were going to launch an RFP, and remember I referenced back to that lawsuit. So in 1993, they launched a request for proposal to find an organization that would be willing to provide kinship care services to kin families as a result of this lawsuit and as a result of bad practice that was happening around kinship care, that people were exiting without necessarily receiving what they needed for the necessary supports to take care of the children. And so Dr. McDaniel, Dr. Sharon McDaniel, who is our leader, our fierce leader here at A Second Chance, she is our founder, our president, and our CEO. She responded to the call to the RFP to be able to provide that intensive service that was needed to support kinship caregivers. And so she responded to the RFP. A second chance became birthed in 1994. And we have been around since then, providing care directly to kinship caregivers, helping them get through the licensing process so that they can receive the necessary supports. Financial supports was a piece of it, but it's all the other supportive services, in which I will show you later on in the presentation. And so this is where the cuffs of it and the practice in Allegheny County began to shift. In that late 80s, early 90s, Allegheny County, which is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was considered to be the worst child welfare organization in the land. You can actually Google that and you will probably see some of those words. That practice began to shift in 1994, whenever the agency decided to launch this RFP in 1993 to get a kinship care organization, because it wasn't just about the kinship care practice that wasn't good. It was the overall foster care practice, and everything else just was not going well at that point in time. And there were a lot of child deaths and kids left at risk back in that time. But fast forward at many years later, the organization in Allegheny County, the Public Child Welfare, has totally shifted from being the worst in the land to being a model child welfare organization that people are coming to the city to learn more around the strategies that are being implemented in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all over the child welfare system, and specifically around the kinship space. In 1996, Mark Cherna, who is now retired as a director of Allegheny County, but he was the longest standing director of the child welfare system. He just retired this year, earlier in the year, in the spring. So he came along in 1996 and just retired here in the spring of 2021. And he made a lot of changes within the jurisdiction where he made the integrated services of the Department of Human Services. Whereas before, each of the program offices operated in a silo. And so the different program offices was one, the Office of Children, Youth, and Families was one of the offices, and that was obviously the child welfare space. Then there was the Office of Intellectual Disabilities, which operated separately. Then it was the Office of the Behavioral Health. And then there was the Office of the Area on Aging that dealt with older citizens. And so when Mark came, he seen that there was all these different silos. And so he integrated the entire model, and it became the Department of Human Services. And while those program offices still fell under it, but it was one umbrella, one hospices. And so now I'm going to transition back over to a second chance. And so in 1994, Second Chance comes on the scene after responding to the RFP and became the premier kinship care provider in Allegheny County to be able to service those kin needs. And so referrals would come in from the county, and then we would service them in that way. And so when we talk about a second chance in our model, and I have this here, and I'm not speaking to the screen, but our director, Dr. Sharon McDaniel, as you see, she also is an author and a writer. And if you ever wanted to read her book, it's on my way. And it's all about her experience as she was a child who also was did about in the child welfare system, and she was raised by her grandparents. So I didn't want to lose that note there for you. When we first started out, we started really in the basement of a church, and then we transitioned over into this building, this first building that you see here. And this is our existing building. And so I did want to just give you that context. And before I move on, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions just around the historical aspect of where the county once was in the earlier years and not really servicing kin properly to where we are presently and where we plan to go. Are there any questions? I'll take this silence as no. And so at a second chance, we really talk about, we do kinship on purpose. And what we mean by that on purpose is that in our service model, we have serious convictions about that we believe that we are called to this work. And we firmly believe that based on our calling is how we interact with people, how we see people, how we see their needs, and how we meet people where they are. And we are certain to ensure that we treat everyone with dignity and that we respect those in whom we are called to serve, that we are hearing their voice, knowing that the family is the expert of their family. While we may have some information that was shared with us from the department, we certainly hear the voice of the family because no one can tell me something greater than what the family can share. And so we are upfront and honest with our families. We want to hear their authentic voice. What is it that they are in need of? And this is a premise of how we work. Our convictions, we treat everyone with dignity and respect, and we are open and honest and transparent with each and one of our caregivers. From the kids to the children to the parents, because in our model, you'll hear me say a lot later on, is that we talk about the triad. And for us, the triad is the child, the kinship caregiver, and the birth parent. That we believe that all three are working hand in hand, that you cannot just service one aspect of the triad. Is that our model is really wrapping the services around the family, because ultimately the child is the center. That's the reason that the child has come into the child welfare system based upon something that the parent may or may not have done and put the child at risk. And so it has risen to the level of abuse and or neglect. So the child is the center of the focus, and we're going to make sure that the child is always protected. But around the child is their family, and that's their parents, as well as whomever is the kinship caregiver. So our model is based on one, that we value the family. This is the framework that we start with. Our model is culturally and racially relevant to each family that we serve. We're making sure that the family is connected to their community and that the service delivery that we offer is within their community. We are a community-based organization, and so we are housed in Pittsburgh, if anyone is familiar, in the Wilkinsburg area. Our model is definitely set just specifically on kinship care. Our model is not redacted from a traditional foster care model. It is specifically focusing on families and how families function and the current dynamics that families are dealing with within the context of their family, and always being mindful of the family culture as well as their traditions. Our families we're constantly revising and revamping what our service model looks like based upon what we hear from the triad. And that's why we believe that all four of these things, having the value, being triad center, being culturally and racially relevant, keeping the child at the center of focus, and making sure that our delivery of service is within the community, is because we don't expect people to have to come out of their community and come to us. We will go to you and service you wherever you are, because our main focus is making sure that the family is operating in a means of a way that the child can go back home. There may be those circumstances in which a child may not be able to return home. And so we're working concurrently on another goal, whether it's in Pennsylvania, we call it subsidized permanent legal custodianship. And then we also have adoption. However, the crux of our model is just like in any other system, is that we're looking at safety, well-being, and permanency, and ultimately working towards that goal of reunification and wrapping those services around the family, knowing that, let me say it this way, knowing that there are rules and regulations, but not allowing the rules and regulations to dictate the work, but allowing the value for the family and really hearing their voice around what is it that they need. And when we talk about traditional foster care, how it may not be so family focused is because when a family begins, they're contained within their own household. In traditional foster care, the way that we see it is, in this image is depicting it, is that the child is removed from the overall family and placed with some strangers that they may not know, and the family is trying to find a way how they can get back in. But in kinship care, as you know, it's just a matter of shifting within the family. And for us, we define kin as anyone who has a close relationship for the child. So in this kinship dynamic, the family still is empowered to make the decisions as it relates to that young person. And that's what we stand on, is empowering the family and hearing their voices from our service delivery model. We do nothing without hearing the voices of the family. This is not, we tell you, this is what we see that you need. We allow you to invite us into your space, and we hear what you tell us that you need. And then we are the supporting cast, if you will, that will align those necessary services based upon what that family has shared that they need. We have what's called a kinship strength assessment, in which we use, and which helps us and helps the family identify those areas that they see are their strengths, in those areas of opportunities for growth. And in those areas of opportunities for growth, that's where you begin to develop the plan, and that the family, I should say, is developing the plan, and we are instituting the services so that their plan is successful. We know that every family comes with strengths, and that's why you see on the bottom of this triad, where we're talking about the triad, this is a triangle, that is their foundation. The strength of the family is the foundation. The child is at the center and at the core, but we are looking at the maternal side and the paternal side to wrap around those supports along with the birth parent. Oftentimes in child welfare, sometimes the parent's voice is not always heard, because people look at them, well, you would not have made this mistake, you wouldn't be in this situation. That's not how we see things. Everyone has made some poor choices, perhaps in their lives, and may not have had bouts in the child welfare system. But we are an agency that is about empowering the family and meeting them where they are and helping them get to where they want to be, so that they can be healthy and whole and take care of their family and their child. And so that's why I continue to speak about wrapping that necessary services. We are not excluding any part of the triad. We believe the maternal family and the paternal family are both important to the rearing of the child and the support of the birth parent. Oftentimes in child welfare, the father is not oftentimes thought about, left out of the case. But here at a second chance, we make sure that we are talking to the mother, the father, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncle, the friends, anyone who you tell us that you consider to be your family. We're going to engage them in this process as your support, to show that we are doing a holistic approach. And while we know that there are additional stressors that are outside of the family, there are stressors within the community, there are stressors that just come involved in being in child welfare, but we take everything from a strength-based perspective and not from a deficit base. And that's why our assessment tool is the Kinship Strength Assessment, because we're about building upon one's strength and not identifying what their deficits may be. It's very easy to point out what someone's negatives might be, but it's often hard for some to see the strength of anyone. And so that's where we set our structure in, is building upon the strengths of the family and hearing exactly from them of a level of intervention that you're looking for. So I wanted to just go with you of how a case comes to our attention. So once a call is made into the public child welfare organization, they go through their investigation process. And once they make a determination that based upon the tenets of the case that the child is not able to stay in the household, they make a determination that removal has to occur, and then they have to go into, I'm not going to go into no deep process around the processes that they have to take to get permissions from the court to be able to make that removal. But early on in that decision making, they have which is called the Kinship Navigator. And what is very, very different about the Kinship Navigator is that the Kinship Navigator is really a staff person of a second chance who works in the county department with the county caseworker and all the county staff. So the Kinship Navigator is engaged to help them begin to identify family resources. In the first place that our kinship caregiver looks to, who do you think they look to first if a child is not able to stay with the parent? In our model, a Kinship Navigator is having a conversation with the parents first. That's another way of empowering the parents and them being able to make decisions of where they would see their child go. So we asked the parents, the mother and the father, to please give us a list of relatives on whom they would like their child to be placed with. And then from the list in whom they have shared, those are the family members that the Kinship Navigator begins to assess. And remember, this is happening in a crisis situation, or this may not be a crisis situation. It may be where the children are at home, but they're at risk of removal. And so once the navigator has had the conversation with the parents, and the parents have identified some resources in which the Kin Navigator can reach out to their family members to talk to them about what is occurring and their willingness to be the caregiver for the children, they then take on part of the responsibilities that CYF would typically do. This all came about because there was a period of time where Allegheny County was having some slippage in their kinship placements, and they seen there was a decline. And that's how the Kinship Navigator really got instituted, because it was a way of being able to boost the kinship placements and ensuring that kids went to kin first. And so based on this list that the parents share, the Kinship Navigator's role, it's really engaging that relative and seeing their interest in becoming the Kinship Navigator, informing them of what is occurring in the case. And then they're taking them through the emergent clearancing process, while the CYF caseworker is working on those tenets that go with the removal of a child, where you have to get a physical, and there's other things that you have to do when it encompasses removing a kid. But the navigator is really doing the legwork of clearing the relative based off of the list of the parents. And they always vet no less than 3 caregivers, because you're identifying the caregiver based upon what the parents have shared with you, and who's going to be the most appropriate, I don't want to say appropriate, but the best placement for the children, because all kin are not created equal, that some may be better based upon the needs of that child or children. And the goal is to make sure if there is more than one, that the children are placed together. And we have been very successful in keeping siblings together based on the list that the parents have identified. So I'm going to continue down this track. Once the kids are placed with kin through the interventions of the navigator based on whom the parents have identified as family members, and that kin has passed the initial clearing process, the child is then placed. From there, the role of the Kinship Navigator is pretty much ended at that point, and that case is then handed off into another second chance worker, on whom we call the point of contact worker. And that point of contact worker is responsible for then doing the initial visit and working with the relative and the kin and the parents through the licensing process. And in Pennsylvania, the licensing requirements are the same for the kin as well as the traditional foster parent. But the way that we do things is we just do not drop a packet off to the kinship caregiver and say, read it, and figure it out on your own. No, our worker takes the time to sit down with the family. And before we even get to the logistics, we really just have a conversation with the family about how they're doing, what's happening, how are they feeling before going into the necessary documentation to get them through the licensing process. That's the secondary step. Then they speak to the paperwork, and then they help them understand all the necessary requirements of licensing. Because remember, at this point, once the placement was made through CYF, I should have said this earlier, so I'm sorry, I do want to back up a little bit. Once they made the placement, they are speaking to the caregivers about if they are interested in becoming a licensed caregiver or not, if they're interested in just receiving a 30-day payment, or they're not interested in any supporting, no funding source at all from the department. And from there, that's how we then get the case. And so that's why we're now having this conversation with the kinship caregivers around licensing, because they have made the choice that they do want to become a certified foster home to receive the financial benefits and all the other support services that come with being a licensed home. So again, we are talking to the caregivers and not just leaving a packet of information, but going over the information in depth. That is done in our 24-hour visit. In this first visit, you may be with a family from 3 to 4 hours or even longer, because really your first hour of conversation is just getting to know the person and not going into all these logistics, because we care about the person first and the requirements second. And then that point of contact worker, we're carrying this case all the way to such time that the child goes home or moves into another permanent option. But we work very diligently in making sure that kids go home. Now, there is more in this process, and which is just outlined here, and I'm not going into great depths. But afterwards, if you have some questions just around the licensing process, we can go more into the questions and answers. But after we do our first 24-hour visits, there are several different intervals that we are doing the check-in and meeting with the family to getting them across the finish line in the 60 days. And most of our cases, our kinship caregivers are completing the certification process in the 45 days. And so it's very rare that we go above the 60 days. We are around 66% of our cases are definitely certified within that 60-day period. And I'm talking to you about that when we talk about our values for a family, when we talk about ensuring that it is culturally relevant, we are talking about also our support services, how we are wrapping the services around the family based upon what they have shared that they are in need of. And so we have a litany of services for the triad, for the children, for the caregiver, as well as the birth parent. And just some of the services that we have for the youth is we have our youth engagement services, which is group sessions that are done with the youth. And while we're in COVID, these are sessions that used to be done in person, but the interaction has been continuously been going on in a virtual setting. We have several different options. Our Dance for Life is kind of like a cotillion, and kids go through a 6-week learning and then they have a big ball. We also have summer programming. We have college prep. We have our Boys and Men program. Those are all for the youth, and a litany of other services. For our caregivers, we are helping them through the licensing process. We have our grandparent support groups that the grandparents, they love the support group. It gives them opportunity to come together as grandparents and talk with other grandparents who are raising their children, and they just learn from one another. We also have our father group, which is called Fathers Actively Initiating the Hope. And that group is for any male who, whether they are a bio father, a stepfather, a godfather, a mentor, if you identify yourself as a father, you are welcome to attend that father group. The acronym is FAITH, and it is led by, it is facilitated by a man, by men, I should say, and that is their way of coming together and having learning, as well as being able to build camaraderie amongst one another and network with each other. We also provide a free legal clinic for our caregivers, whether they're grandparents or any portion of the triad, where it's a free legal clinic where we have pro bono attorneys that avail themselves to be able to help kin caregivers from any types of situation. If they're having landlord-tenant situations, if someone is dealing with bankruptcy, if someone is dealing with custody issues in their personal lives, it's just a free clinic. It's a free legal service that we offer to the community. And so many of our caregivers and birth parents take advantage of this opportunity, as well as the community members. For our birth families, we have a parent program that's called Family and Children Together. And the whole crux of this parenting program is really focused on reunification and helping the birth parents work through whatever their family plan goals are so they can get reunified with their child. We have a kinship resource specialist who works with the birth parent and the kinship caregivers if they need some outside resources that a second chance does not have, like therapy, getting parents connected to drug and alcohol, if that would be their issues or the reasons that brought them to the attention of child welfare. We have the support group for the parents that's called Parents on the Mission, where they come together, and we just offer a litany of services. We also have a family service transportation department that is able to assist in transporting children to and from school if caregivers are not able to transport and the child is attending school in their school of origin, and that caregiver is not living in that school district, and the school district does not provide the transportation. Our transportation department is able to assist caregivers in that and getting children to and from school, getting children to and from their visits with their parents if they are not held within the caregiver's household, if they have to be held in a child welfare office because they're supervised or they're supervised at a second chance. We have our wellness center. We have our computer center that the community, as well as our kinship caregivers and our birth families can access if they need access to technology and do not have a computer at their home. We have a computer lab at a second chance that they are able to utilize. And as I keep stating, I can't stress it enough that everything that we do is based on the strengths of the family. We also provide our curriculum as caregivers go through the licensing process. It is our own curriculum. It's called Standards for Assessing and Recognizing Kinship Strengths. And that's the training modality in which our kin caregivers go through. And it's based off of kin relationship. It is a 9-module training sessions. And, it deals with anything from dealing with disabilities to dealing with family dynamics to dealing with advocacy for yourself. There's many different topics that are housed within our SARC's curriculum. Our STAC curriculum is Standards for Training and Advancing Kinship Care. That is the training in which our new hires go through. Our STAC training, which is housed up under a Second Chances University. And then we have our family and community enrichment team. And this is just more about the different services that we offer. I spoke to you already around our kinship strength assessment. We have our in-home clinical services, which is an in-home service if families would like additional support, if a child is maybe having some behavioral and the caregiver is saying that they need some additional support around the child or around school or whatever, we are able to send in some of our clinicians from our in-home clinical service team. We also have our high impact unit that is focused on teens, and that gives another higher level intervention services to family as another means of support. We also offer, and these are other modalities that we use. I talked to you about FACT in our transportation department, but we have another program that's called Stepping Into Families. And that is one of our modalities where children who are currently in higher levels of care, like group home or residential care, that we are working with the public child welfare and stepping them out of this higher level care and stepping them into a kinship home and giving them those necessary supports to be successful. And this is just it all in a nutshell. It was a busy slide, but it is just speaking to all of our services and all of our different touch points as we are working with the families who come in contact with the Second Chance and how we service them. One thing that I didn't share with you is around our warm line, that is our 24-hour line for any caregivers, birth parents, whoever are in need can call the warm line and speak to someone 24 hours. And someone is, well, I should say it's not 24 hours at this point in COVID, but the warm line is open and available to speak to someone, or they can leave a message and we can get back to them. But we do have a 24-hour line, which is our on-call line. If in case of emergency, we are accessible 24 hours, 7 days a week to deal with any emergencies. And so the caregivers and the birth parents are aware of our 24-hour line. I wanted to just share with you some data points around where we are in our service delivery and how many of the families that we are servicing. In Allegheny County, with our partnership with Allegheny County, they are looking to ensure that 70% of the children that are in care are in kinship care. And currently 65% of the children who are in placement are in kinship care. So they are being serviced by a second chance, meaning that all of these kinship families are going through or have been licensed. In Philadelphia, and I didn't speak too much around our Philadelphia model, but a second chance is also housed in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia. And then we work with contiguous counties just in Pennsylvania. The goal for Philadelphia is that 58% of the kids in care would be in kinship care. And currently they're at a goal of 55%. And again, these are kinship caregivers who have chosen to go the licensing route based upon the needs of their family. On any given day at a second chance, we are servicing approximately 1,800 children at any given day. When we look at our statistics and second chance compared to the national statistics around permanency, we are definitely ensuring that kids, if they are not returning home, that they are not lingering in the system longer than which they need to be. And so for reunification, well, we are just a little under the national average. So we're up underneath the 7 months of kids going into care. So from the time that the child is removed, it's taking 6.9 months, almost 7 months for the child to return home. For kids who are not returning home and the goal has transitioned to adoption, it's taking us 18 months, which is a lot lower than the national average of 29 months. And for those children who, as I stated, in Pennsylvania, is called subsidized permanent legal custodianship. You may call it subsidized guardianship. In Ohio, for us, it's taking approximately 7.51 months from the point of entry to the point of exit. And nationally, it's around 24 months. We have very low, it's almost unaccounted for kids once they have been involved in a second chance, that there has not been any new substantiated reports. For us, majority of our children, 95% of them are completing high school and they are remaining in their school of origin, that kids are having educational stability in their kin homes. And so we are very proud of that. And while we don't have many statistics on the young men around if they are having children or not, but our percentage of our young ladies having and getting pregnant while in care, it's 1%. So it's very, very low compared to the number of children that we are servicing every day. Over the course of our time that we've been serving families, we have served over 40,000 children, over 32,000 parents, over 20,000 caregivers. And we have a staff between the Philadelphia office and the Pittsburgh office. Basically, we're just shy of 300 staff members. So we have a medium-sized organization. And so we're very proud of the work that we are doing, and certainly being able to assist families in keeping families together and ensuring that kids are returned to their parents expeditiously and not having to remain in the child welfare system longer than necessary. And certainly for those youth that are unable to return home, that we are moving with a sense of urgency to getting them to permanency so that they are able to obtain their forever home. And so while they may not return to their parents, they are still being within the context of their family. So even if the case does go to adoption or subsidized permanent legal custodianship, they are being finalized with those in whom they've known and have loved them versus being with strangers. Are there any questions thus far? Because I am coming to the close of my presentation with you today, but I did want to just give you a little note around some additional work that we are doing now, because we are always open in hearing the voices of our grandparents. And so we are currently in the midst of doing an analysis. Back in July, we are working in tandem with the University of Pittsburgh, which is located in Pittsburgh, and also another nonprofit organization in Pittsburgh, Allegheny Family Network, to really hearing more from the caregivers, because we already spoke about the number of caregivers, a number of, I should say, grandparents that are caring for their grandchildren, hearing about their joys and the funds, and then also hearing about their overall experience, and where are those areas that while we offer a lot of services, where is there still need that we can improve on, because we never think or believe that we have reached the plateau, that we always are growing and growing and growing. And the only way that we could do that is hear the voice of whom we're serving. And majority of our youth are with their grandparents. And so we recently did a survey in July to hear the grandparents' voice. We did surveys, and we also did focus groups. For those who were not able to attend the focus groups, could still share their thoughts through a survey. And so we are still collating that data to see from a strength-based perspective what is going well, what are the joys of being a grandparent, raising again for the second time around, where are some of the struggles that the grandparents are seeing, where is there still a need, or where is there a gap that still needs to be filled in supporting grandparents as they are caring for their grandchildren. This is how we remain and stay relevant at a second chance, and keeping our practice always forward moving and forward thinking, and being able to provide what is needed so that our families can be successful. And so again, I just thank you for hearing me today and learning more about a second chance. And now I open the floor up to you for your questions.
Hello, my name is Peggy Ellen Faulkner. I came a little late, but it was about 10 after 1 when I got on. I agree with the person that was talking about how resources funding is not good for us. I'm raising 2 grandsons. I've had them since they were 3 and 4 years old. They are now 15 and 14. And they can't do any sports or anything because I can't afford to pay for it. I'm on SSI and I can't afford to pay. And I'm talking about 2, not 1. So it's even harder for me. Camps, these camps that you have, they, after around 13, you can no longer go to camp, they age out. And so it's been really hard getting them into something like during the summer, and and I hear what you're saying, and it seems like it has come a long way, but there's still no help for those with the older children that are teenagers, and and their needs are just as much as when they were little. They still have needs. The clothes cost more, the shoes cost more. But there's nothing, coming extra to help
Right.
out.
Right.
And
They start out, we get them as little children, but then they become teenagers where everything becomes more expensive and becomes unaffordable. I'm with you on that, ma'am.
yes, and then I've also tried to get SSI for one of my grandchildren, and I had no help, so it really didn't go through. And you know, it seems that this kinship, there should have been someone there that could help me to go through this process. That was back in 2016, and the child has gone through more things and has had to be put in a psych unit for a while, and you know, and where's, you know, where was the help that I needed to maybe push and get this SSI? But when I found out when you do it on your own, you don't know the ins and outs, and they're like, oh, well, you don't need it, and that's that.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate that that has occurred, because that really is the role of the caseworker. And at a second chance, that is the role that we take on in helping our caregivers be able to maximize what it is that they need. We have our own internal services, and whether you are still an active case with a second chance or not, our services are also provided to the community. And so we're able to support the community in some different endeavors. I have spoke to some of the things that we are able to do. The majority of our services are connected to when you have an open case, but we do have some services that are open straight to the community to assist. Our Kinship Navigator is there to assist the community. Our kinship resource person is there to assist the community that would be able to help in these situations where you're saying you needed some help. Now, as far as different stipends in that, we do provide that for our kin relatives, clothing, whatever it is that is needed. When kids first go into placement, oftentimes they don't come with any clothing. And so we are able to provide that clothing for kin caregivers to be able to go out and do the shopping and be able to support that along the way as well.
I do have a
And,
question. Oh, sorry.
and I wanted to speak to the camp aspect. That is true across the land once kids become 13. Many of us camps do not take the teenagers unless it's like an art camp or a sports camp. And so we do have some of those. And there is a stipend that each child receives to be able to go to camp, even if it is an overnight camp versus a day camp or a sports camp. So we do have that. Within a second chance, we have a basketball camp. It's called Camp Copes. And so that is free to our families. We also have, it's called ASCI Reads, which is our literacy reading camp, where kids continuously are able to do different reading assignments throughout the summer. They do a lot of different field trips, and that is open to the children. So I would say there should be some camps that's available in your region. Do you all have kinship navigators there that are able to be a resource in Ohio?
Not that I know of. I have no clue. I'm not connected with anyone. It's just me and these children.
Yes, Lisa, and to answer Ms. Faulkner's issues, we do have kinship navigators in the state. Right now, they are in regions, and it's through the Ohio CAN program, OKAN program statewide. There's a website for them under OCAN where it shows the regions, and there's a 1-800 number that you can call, and they will send you to the region that you're in, and the navigator that is dealing with the county that you're in to give you help with some of the issues that have been mentioned here. I also want to address the issues and I agree that this model is excellent. It's very comprehensive. It's very complex, and I know it's taken a while to get where you are, but and one of the reasons why, not just to showcase your model, but to show what could be done, hopefully here in Ohio, if we pull together and let the agencies, the state agency know, Department of Job and Family Services, and our legislators know, because this is where the funding is going to come from in order to create this type of a model here in Ohio. And the issues that the caregivers are bringing up right now, our legislators have to hear these issues. Otherwise, it falls on deaf ears. You have to start contacting your legislators within your area and let them know, just like you said, Ms. Faulkner, you got to tell them your story. They need to hear the stories of the caregivers. This is what makes a difference in legislators acting on passing legislation for funding and for programming. And if they don't know the stories, if they don't hear them, if you don't tell them, I vote for you, and if you want my vote, this is what's important to me, then they're gonna, who they're gonna deal with is who they hear from. So we need to really focus on getting legislators to hear the stories, understand what their issues are, understand what the needs are. We are working with several legislators in the state, and hopefully we'll be pulling together some type of possibly a legislative forum sometime, hopefully by the end of the year, to let legislators know what the needs are of kinship caregivers, and to know that their voices count, their votes count. And that's what's the important thing, is your vote counts. And if they think that they can get your vote or keep your vote and listen to you and do some things for caregivers, then that's what will make the case for what you need. Otherwise, you're talking to a group, you're preaching to the choir right now, and we know the issues that are out there, and we hear the stories all the time, but we've got to get it outside this group and get it to the level where the state agencies know and the legislators know that we need these things, and we can't, you can't wait any longer. These are really important needs and critical needs for these kids to be able to develop.
Absolutely. And one thing I would like to also share, that at a second chance, we have another extension of a second chance, and it's called Kinship Insight Solutions, which is our business aspect, where we work with different nonprofits and public child welfare organizations, where we do technical assistance. We also do training. We do our kinship strength assessment on a professional version level, and we do coaching. And I wanted to share that we are working currently with Franklin County on some work, and some of the things that you all are sharing, I have jotted down some notes. I don't know if anyone lives in Franklin County, but I certainly will share some of the feedback from the kinship caregivers around the additional supports that are needed in the land, in the region.
And just to encourage those on the line to reach out to Angela, who's on the line, who hosts the support group here in Ohio. Get involved so you have additional support moving forward, so you're not out there by yourself. You want to say anything, Angela, about your support group?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dr. Raleigh. I feel bad I haven't been able to make these presentations because of my class schedule, but I can make it today. I'll share the website. It's actually a pretty new website that I'm excited about in the chat. And I'll also put my email in there. You could reach out through the website or directly through my email. And we meet every week, Thursdays from 6:30 to 7:30. And we have some speakers come in, kind of like today. Some meetings, it's just caregivers talking. And I don't have all the answers for you all, but I have found that peer support and knowing that you're not alone does make a difference. So I encourage you to check out our website and also send me an email if you're interested. Even if you can't make that meeting time, I do send out recordings and slideshows so you can look at it on your own time. We do also have like a group message you can join if you're wanting to talk to caregivers on a more regular basis. So yeah.
Yes, support groups are
Wonderful.
definitely an awesome way. We do have different support groups for each one of our triads, and that is a wealth of information. A wealth of information comes out of those support groups because each one is able to share what their experience has been, some of their things that have worked for them and that may work for someone else. You learn from each other, you share different techniques and other resources.
And you can also reach out to me via email if you have an issue and just don't know where to turn to, and we can connect you. The coalition can connect you, particularly if you're having mental health issues with your children. As a licensed therapist, I can, will work to connect you with the therapist in your area.
Thank you.
Miss Lenora.
Hi, I had to pick. Hi, everybody. How you doing? I'm a kinship caregiver out here in Ohio, Franklin County area. And I just had to piggyback on Miss Angela because I am a part of her support group. And I think I've been in it for almost a year or maybe little over a year. And the difference that it have made in my life as raising these grandkids. I always say that I'm the stressed out, overwhelmed grandmother trying to raise 2 hyper grandsons. They came to me 4 and 6 with absolutely nothing but the clothes in their backs, but I made it work in getting them the things they needed. I didn't qualify for nothing, which it is what it is. But being a part of the support group, to be around women who are doing the same thing that you're doing or going through the same thing you are going through, and to be able to talk to them and just get support and knowledge and resources, guidance, feedback is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Like Angela knows, every Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30, I'm looking forward to it. Also, just to have grown-up conversations, because it's just me and these 2 boys in the house, and after a while, I don't want to talk to them no more. So grown-up conversation, support. So that support group it made a big difference in my life. So, and like, I didn't even realize I've been with it for a year. And I found it through Miss Barb, who's on here also. I think I reached out to, I don't know, just I'm a resourceful person. So I must have did something, reached out to Barb, who reached me out to Angela, and I've been with it for a year. So the point of me coming on is, if you have a support group in your area or your county or wherever, get on it, get in it, get on it, get involved. It will help you in so many areas. Love you, Angela.
Aw, thank you so much. That made me so happy. And we are actually statewide and on Zoom, so that does help with some accessibility. We actually did have an outdoor picnic to celebrate Grand Families Month this past week, which is our first time meeting in person, which was super special. But the meetings are weekly and online. Thank you.
That's good. That's nice.
I am part of that support group too, and I've only been in it for about a month, but I already feel 100% better knowing that there's others that are in the same boat as me.
Thank
So
you.
I wanted to ask you all a question. Is there a kinship organization in Ohio? I know many are in different areas, but
Ohio Can's the only one I think I can know of.
When you say organization, what specifically are you referring to when you say organization?
is there a kinship specific organization in
No.
Ohio?
Other than,
Well, the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition is our statewide advocacy organization. And it's comprised of caregivers, any agencies who work with caregivers, support caregivers and advocates. So it is a statewide grandparent and kinship care advocacy organization and support.
Probably the closest organization to what you are talking about that a second chance looks like, Lisa, is probably OCAN. But OCAN, again, they've been around, what, I think 2 years or 3 years. I think some of their people may be on and they could speak to that. But they do a lot of information referral, and they also do some other services to help caregivers to try and stabilize the placements. But nothing in Ohio is extensive as a second chance, which is part of why, as we discussed today's presentation, we really felt it was important to get a second chance in this discussion, so that caregivers as well as providers could hear sort of what it is that a second chance does, understand how you evolve. And you've done a wonderful job presenting it. I mean, people who don't know, Dr. McDaniel she is seen as one of the stars in the kinship care arena around the country. She has been around for many years. Dr. Jones and I have known her going back probably 20, 30 years. She was trained under some of the greatest people and philosophers and thinkers around kinship care issues that this country's ever known, whether it was Professor Sandra Jackson or Ernestine Jones, Dr. Julia Dancy. There were just so many people who were doing this work before there were names to this work. And Dr. McDaniel really picked it up, and Second Chance is the premier organization. It is the premier organization in the country. I feel comfortable saying that focuses on these issues. And so part of why we wanted this opportunity for our kin caregivers to hear it, as well as providers to hear it, is to really think about what other models might be of help to families as we struggle to try and make sure they're getting everything they need to be successful with their children.
Sister.
Yes, and I hope that you found the presentation to be useful to you, because it's taken 27 years. As a Second Chance began in 1994, and prior to that, as I had shared with you all, is that Allegheny County, Philadelphia just was not on the map and doing good work, and just were not supporting kin. But once Dr. McDaniel has created a Second Chance, it has shifted the land, it has shifted the practice, and it has shifted the attention that caregivers, kinship caregivers need.
I want to also acknowledge Sister Netta Wilson from Sankofa, Chicago. She's also on the line. If you want to say anything, Sister Wilson.
Hi, Dr. Anetta.
Good afternoon, everybody. This was just wonderful. And I see quite a few people that I know that's here, and has really been hard at this kind of work and keeping our families together and giving, and some of us, even though across the country that I work with congressional people, they may not be doing it as fully as Second Chance is right now, but it's catching on fire across this country.
Yes.
And people at least are thinking of it. I agree with Ronald that it just takes a little while sometimes for people to just dig in and do what is right for our families.
Yes, but we want to encourage people to still keep hope that the system is shifting and changing, and people are hearing based upon you continuously sharing your voice, advocating for yourself, putting it out there, because the more that you say it, the more someone will hear it and the difference it will make.
Hallelujah.
And I did just want to also say that, Dr. Wilson herself is someone to be reckoned with when it comes to this whole issue of kinship. The Sankofa project in Chicago is one of just a very few in this country where she has developed a system, a housing opportunity for families who are caring for their kin. They have housing, they have social services, they have everything that those families need located in that facility. And it is just a stellar, beautiful facility. And that was her vision. And she single-handedly marched that down. She talks about the story of walking down the street to talk to the developer and said, come on up here, I want to talk to you about doing this. And she made that happen. And so, that's what it takes. It takes vision, and then it takes action behind that vision. And so Dr. Wilson, being on the call today is really great for us, because we are working in Ohio to try and get some development of some housing opportunities for families, because we hear almost daily from families that they're struggling with housing. And so we're working on that.
Thank you so much.
There's another individual on the line that has been working very hard to support caregivers, and that's Dr. Nancy Mendoza from the Ohio State University. And I'd like to give her an opportunity to talk about the Grand Cares Plus Caring for Grand Families initiative that she's head starting and getting off the ground, and how grand families can get involved. Thank you, Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Barb. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see so many like-minded individuals getting together and really trying to make things better, making change. I think we can, as a group, we can all do it, right? Each one of us puts in a little bit. So I've been trying to bring this project into Ohio for quite some time. COVID has given me many obstacles, as I'm sure you guys have experienced as well. But I just wanted to announce that we are finally going to be able to implement Grand Cares Plus, which is a 8-week intervention program for grandparents and their grandchildren. So the grandparents participate in a self-care education program that really helps them to manage and deal with the stress and the demands of raising grandchildren. We do a lot of self-care. We talk about communication, family meetings, having those tough conversations. And then you also learn about trauma and opioids. And then in the meantime, the grandchildren who are being raised between the ages of 9 and 12 learn the exact same things in parallel, but in an age-appropriate way using 4-H principles. So there's a lot of activities, a lot of talking, a lot of moving around. And then we also add on there a positive youth and leadership development activity. They organize a celebration for the end of the program. And they also are taught about opioids and trauma, but in a very sensitive, appropriate, again, age-appropriate way, where they learn the definitions of each, but they learn more about self-advocacy and taking care of themselves, and the importance of taking care of themselves. And we are going to offer this starting next week. If anyone is interested, I will go ahead and post the flyer on the chat. We are also looking for individuals to co-lead the grandparent component. We pay for the training, and then you get $300 for teaching the program. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'll put my email in the chat, and then also those 2 flyers.
And I'll be posting, I'll have the information also posted on the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition website. So you can go there if you become interested at a later point in time.
Also go to the website and listen to this presentation again, or in any other presentations that have gone before. So they're right there on the website. So please feel free to go and see what's there. Are there any other questions for the speaker? Or any other comments? This has been wonderful, a lot of good information.
I have a question. My name is Donna Jones, and I do live in Franklin County. And maybe to Miss Mendoza or anyone that knows, are there any resources available to transition children as they get older to housing? I have a child that my grandchild I've had a few years. She's now approaching where she needs to transition to her own housing, but because she's not a former foster child, there is no resources for her. It's very unfortunate because what I've come up with is the Huckleberry House, she has to be homeless. They won't help her with transitional housing. Star House, she is not homeless, so she can't get any help. She can't get subsidized housing because she's not quite 18 yet. There's nowhere for these children to go, and for just her, there's other children that probably 4 or 5 friends that live in potential caregiving situations that don't have somewhere to go. It does result in, because of our structure in this state, it does result in some teenagers being outside in a bad situation. So I just asking for resources for a caregiver that has not let a child go through children's services at all in Ohio. So
is the child planning on attending college?
She has not applied yet. So she graduated at 17 in June. And so because she's not 18, she can't get housing of her own. But no, she has not applied for college yet.
I only ask because you might just send your information to Barbara, because we do work with the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority. And I thought there was a program for young people who are going to be going to college, but they may not want to stay on campus and they have no other places where they can live, where there is a facility that they may take her in. So if you send your information to Barbara, I will try and follow up and see what we can find.
I will. I'll send it to Barb. And I am aware of the Scholar House. Someone else gave me that information, but she's not a college student, so they weren't willing to take the application. So, so it's just the housing situation. And I think the model of what you're doing in Pennsylvania, it would be great, you know, especially for those of us that are caregivers, but not connected with children's services, you know. But I'll send my information to Barb. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? We have like about 8 minutes. So,
well, I'd like to encourage, if you've not already listed your name as a caregiver in the chat, please do. Currently, I have 8 people that have listed their names as caregivers in this chat. So if you know, okay, I see Jamie. Anybody else hasn't already listed your name earlier in the chat?
So
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So if you are a kinship care provider on the call, put your name in the chat, because we're going and stay online after we finish. Because we're going to pull a raffle and we're giving away $50 gift cards. So we want to make sure that you have opportunity to win one of those gift cards.
Okay, well, I think we changed it just a little bit, Dr. Jones, and during the meeting, Ron had given me some information to update what we're going to do with the gift cards. Because of Ron's generosity and in having some funds available and some generosity from the people on OGKC, we're going to be able to give $50 gift cards to each one of the caregivers that are have been in the meeting. So what I need you to do is I'm going to put my email information, and most of you have it because I'm the one that sends out all the messages. But in case you don't, I'm putting my email address in the chat box, and you can then send me your mailing address so we can make sure that you receive the gift card through the mail.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it's in recognition of all that you do 365 days a year, not just September, but all that you do during the year for the kids in your care, and we certainly appreciate it.
Are there any other questions before we let you go? And just keep one thing in mind: we all who are on here, we have been or currently kinship care providers. I know Ron is still a kinship care provider. I was a kinship care provider a couple of years ago. Thought I was going to go crazy, but I was a kinship care provider. And I know Barb has been. So we all have been touched by the bumblebee at some point in our lives. And so we want to encourage, so we know what you're going through with the many challenges of not having the supportive resources and the things that you need, and want you to know that we are here for you. Reach out to us. You can also go to the website and send a message. Barb, we monitor those things. So if you have a questions or just don't know which direction to go in, reach out to us and we will point you in the right direction. I want to also thank our speaker, Ms. Chambers, for doing an awesome job of sharing with us the organization and what she's doing and what they're doing. And it lets us know that it can be done. You know, a second chance, it can't, and we need more second chances around the country. You know, it's a stellar model. Sankofa is a stellar model. You know, so we need to begin to look at how we can advocate, how we can put, and I got some things going in my head in terms of what we can do to get dollars to create something like that. So I want to encourage the caregivers, you know, hang in there. We're here for you. I thank Angela for doing the support group. She's done. It started out as a project from college, but she has really pulled it forward, and she's doing a fantastic job. So we thank, you know, Barb and Lynn Stevens and Ron, all of you who are part of the coalition. You know, it has been an honor just to hear so much good information today. So make sure you mark your calendars for next month. We're going to be presenting on cyber, what is it?
Cybersecurity.
October the 20th on cybersecurity.
Because we all have grandchildren who are on Chromebooks, on the internet, and we want to make sure that you understand how to protect your children from inappropriate things on the internet. Anything that any other officers want to say before we close this out?
Dr. Jones, I just want to say thank you to the Ohio Grandparents Kinship. I want to thank each and every one of you for even listening and wanting to learn more about a second chance in our service delivery here in Pennsylvania. I wish you all well. And if there's anything that we could do for you, you can reach me directly at area code 412-303-2964, or you can visit a Second Chance's website in your leisure at asecondchance-kinship.com.
Thank you, everybody.
We are always here to support in whatever way that we can.
And so Dr. Jones, we did want to just thank, you know, everybody, like Dr. Jones said, for being there. But we did want to just, you know, again, reiterate, please, if you have the opportunity, go on the Second Chance's website and look at what they do. Go on Sankofa, and we will put the links in on OGKC's website so you all can go see, because Sankofa also is it is a culturally appropriate program that is really doing some cultural competence work that is out there. So if you're struggling, looking for how we can do a better job with serving families of different cultures and backgrounds, those are those organizations you want to talk with. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Jones, it's yours.
Okay, have a good afternoon, and we'll see you next month. Thank you for being a part of the process.